This is perfect.
Just like you.
The champagne was expensive. I could tell by the way it tasted like arrogance. I stood at the edge of Marco Belaluchcci's penthouse, watching the city breathe beneath us, all those lights, all those lives, all of them smaller than the man currently ignoring me from across the room. He wasn't actually ignoring me. That was the problem. Marco didn't ignore people. He studied them, calculated them, owned them. And he'd been studying me for the last 3 minutes like I was a problem he hadn't decided how to solve yet. "You're thinking too loud," I said, turning to face him. "I can hear it from here." His lips curved. Not quite a smile. Never quite a smile with Marco. It was more like a predator remembering why hunting was interesting. "Am I?" His voice was low, measured, the kind of voice that made people confess things they'd buried for years. "What am I thinking about, Giuliana?" The way he said my name. Always like it tasted good to him. I'd met Marco 6 weeks ago at a gallery opening. I was there because my boss dragged me. He was there because he owned half the building. Our eyes met across a crowd of people who didn't matter, and something in my chest cracked open like I'd been waiting my whole life for that specific moment. I didn't know then that he was the Mafia Boss. I found out 3 days later when I made the mistake of asking my roommate about him. "That's Marco Belaluchcci," she'd whispered, pale. "Don't. Just don't." But I already had. Now I was standing in his penthouse at midnight on a Thursday, wearing a dress that cost more than my rent, drinking champagne that probably cost more than my car, and testing a man who could destroy me with a single phone call. It was stupid. It was also the most alive I'd ever felt. "You're thinking about control," I said, moving closer. The air between us changed temperature. "You're thinking about how to keep me. You're thinking that I'm either the best decision you'll make or the worst, and you haven't figured out which yet." Marco set his glass down slowly. Deliberately. Every movement he made was a choice, executed with precision. Nothing was accidental. Nothing was wasted. "You're dangerous," he said. "I'm terrified," I corrected. "There's a difference." "There isn't." He turned to face me fully now, and the way he looked at me made my skin electric. Terrified people do reckless things. Reckless things get people hurt. "Are you going to hurt me?" I asked. The pause was long enough to contain 1,000 answers. "No," he said finally. "But I'm not sure I can protect you from what comes next." I should have walked away then. Any rational person would have. But I'd stopped being rational the moment his eyes found mine in that gallery. And besides, I was tired of being rational. I was tired of being safe. I was tired of small men with small ambitions who thought they knew what I needed. "Tell me something," I said, moving even closer until I could smell the cologne on his skin, something dark and expensive. "You're surrounded by people who say yes to you. Your business associates. Your security. Probably your exes. Where is this going?" Marco asked, but he didn't move away. "Everywhere." I smiled up at him. Rich men don't know how to please a woman because they're used to buying compliance. They think money and power are the same as understanding. They think you can purchase what you have to earn. Marco's jaw tightened. I watched the muscle flex, watched his eyes go darker. Watched him process the challenge. "You're testing me," he said quietly. "I'm asking for better than money," I said. "Show me you're actually different." He was quiet for a long moment. Long enough that I started to wonder if I'd miscalculated. Long enough that the air between us felt dangerous in a new way, not dangerous exciting, but dangerous dangerous. Then Marco leaned in. His hand came up to my face, and I stopped breathing. His fingers traced my jawline with a gentleness that contradicted everything about him. His thumb brushed my cheekbone, and I realized I was trembling. "Want a bet?" he whispered. The word hung between us like smoke. I understood, in that moment, why people feared Marco Belaluchcci. It wasn't the power. It wasn't the money or the organization or the men who moved at his command. It was this, his ability to make you feel like you were the center of his universe, like every decision he made from this second forward would be calculated around keeping you there. What's the bet? I breathed. His other hand found my waist, and he pulled me closer. Not aggressively. Deliberately. Like he was solving a puzzle and I was the final piece. I show you exactly what separates me from every rich man you've ever met, he said. And you stop running scared. I'm not running scared. You are. His voice was gentle, which somehow made it more devastating. You've been running scared since the gallery. You think if you provoke me, I'll prove I'm like the others. Shallow. Predictable. Safe to walk away from. He was right. The realization hit me like a punch. What if you're not? I asked. Then you'll have to stay, he said simply. And that terrifies you more than anything else. The penthouse was silent except for the hum of the city below. I could feel his heart beating against my chest. I could feel the restraint in his hands, the careful control of a man used to taking what he wanted but choosing not to. This isn't fair, I whispered. You already know how to do this. Do what? His lips were near my ear now, and every word sent electricity down my spine. Make me feel like I'm the only person in the world. You are, he said, and the certainty in his voice made me believe him. Right now, in this moment, everyone else ceases to exist. Your worries about who I am, what I do, whether this is safe, I'm about to make all of that irrelevant. Is that the bet? I asked. To distract me? No. He pulled back just enough to look at my face. His eyes were so dark they looked black. The bet is that I can make you understand the difference between a man who buys what he wants and a man who earns what he values. Then his mouth was on mine. It wasn't what I expected. I expected force. I expected the claiming of a prize. Instead, it was deliberate. It was a question asked slowly, a confession made careful. His lips moved against mine with precision, tasting me like I was something he wanted to understand completely. My hands found his shoulders, and I pulled him closer. This was what he meant about pleasing a woman. Not the possession. The attention. The singular focus that made it feel like he was reading every thought in my head and answering them before they were fully formed. He deepened the kiss, and I felt the control shift. Not to him exactly, it was more like we were syncing, like we'd suddenly found the same rhythm. His hands moved to my back, drawing me impossibly closer, and I heard myself make a small sound against his lips. When he finally pulled away, I was shaking. That's the difference? I asked breathlessly. That's the beginning, he corrected, and there was something dangerous in his smile now. But yes. I don't buy compliance. I don't assume. I listen. I watch. I learn exactly what makes you come alive, and then I become that for you. He stepped back, and the cold air hit my skin like ice water. I felt the loss of him physically. You're cruel, I said. I'm strategic, he replied. You wanted to know if I was different. Now you do. The question is what you do with that information. I understood then that Marco Belaluchcci had just shown me his real power. It wasn't the mafia. It wasn't the money or the man or the empire he controlled. It was the ability to make you want something so badly that the wanting itself became dangerous. I started, but he held up a hand. I know what you want, he said. The question is whether you're ready for what comes with it. By day 3, I understood that accepting Marco's attention meant accepting his control. He called me every morning. Not to ask how I was. To tell me he'd arranged for a car to pick me up. He sent clothes to my apartment, designer pieces that somehow fit perfectly, like he'd memorized my body in that one kiss. He appeared at my workplace and made my boss incredibly nervous just by existing in the lobby. Stop, I told him on a Thursday afternoon, cornering him outside my office building. You're making this weird. I'm making this mine, he corrected, and there was no apology in his tone. You said you wanted a man who earned your value. I'm earning it. By following me? I demanded. By controlling every aspect of my life? By making sure nothing hurts you, he said, and the certainty in his voice made me angry because it was so absolute. I know what I am, Giuliana. I know what my world contains. You're not walking into it unprepared. I don't need you to protect me from your world. I need you to let me breathe. You can breathe. He stepped closer. You just won't be breathing anywhere without my knowledge. It should have terrified me. Instead, it made me furious. Not because he was controlling, because he was right. I'd walked into this knowing exactly what he was. And now that he was being exactly what he was, I wanted to act surprised. This is insane, I said. This isn't romance. This is obsession. Yes, he agreed simply. It is. The difference between a man who loves you and a man who's obsessed with you is that the obsessed man will burn down the world to keep you. That's what you get with me, Giuliana. Not poetry. Not flowers. You get a man willing to destroy empires to keep you safe. What if I don't want that? I challenged. What if I want normal? His laugh was dark. You've never wanted normal. Normal was killing you. You just wanted to pretend you had a choice. He was right, and I hated him for it. I'm leaving, I said, turning away. No, you're not, he called after me, and I heard the smile in his voice. You're going to go home. You're going to think about what I said. And tomorrow, you're going to let me show you that protection and freedom don't have to be opposites. And if I don't? I asked, turning back. Then I'll make the decision for you, he said. I'm remarkably good at that. He showed up at my apartment that night with Italian food and an apology that wasn't really an apology. I'm not sorry for wanting to protect you, he said, setting down containers of pasta. But I'm sorry for moving too fast. You need to feel like you have choices. Even if we both know you won't choose anything except me. Despite everything, I laughed. The arrogance was almost endearing. Why are you so sure? I asked, taking a seat at my tiny kitchen table. Because I watched you at that gallery for 45 minutes before you noticed me, he said. You were looking for something. Someone. You were hungry for a life bigger than what you had. I could see it in your eyes. And you decided you were that person? I knew I was, he said simply. The only question was whether you'd be brave enough to accept it. We ate in silence for a while. There was something oddly domestic about it, this dangerous man sitting at my kitchen table, eating pasta like he wasn't running half the criminal enterprise in the city. Tell me something, I said. In your world, in your business, do you let anyone challenge you like I do? No, he said without hesitation. Why do you let me? He was quiet for a long moment, considering the question with the same intensity he'd shown when studying me that first night. Because you're the only one who sees me as something other than what I built, he said finally. Everyone else sees the empire. The power. The danger. You see, something underneath. And I want to be that person for you. I want to earn it. My chest tightened. That's not fair, I whispered. You can't say things like that and expect me to maintain any kind of objectivity. I'm not asking for objectivity, he said. I'm asking for trust. Based on what? I challenged. 3 weeks of knowing you? 3 weeks of you surveilling my life? Based on the fact that I could destroy you right now if I wanted to, he said quietly. I could disappear you. I could ruin you. I could make sure you never worked in this city again. And instead, I'm sitting in your apartment eating your terrible apartment food, trying to convince you that I'm worth the risk. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be, he said. Reassurance is for people who don't understand the stakes. You understand the stakes now. The question is whether you're willing to play anyway. I looked at him across my kitchen table, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd somehow rewritten the rules of my life in 3 weeks, and I made a decision. "Teach me," I said. "Teach you what?" He set down his fork carefully. "About your world. About why you do what you do. About how someone becomes you." I paused. If I'm going to do this, if I'm going to accept whatever this is, I want to understand it. I don't want to be kept safe in the dark. Something shifted in his expression. I'd seen him calculating before. This was different. This was him realizing that I was serious. "That's dangerous," he said. "So am I replied. "You said so yourself." What followed was an education in power. Marco didn't take me to his office in the traditional sense. He took me to the places where real decisions were made. A warehouse on the docks where he negotiated with men who looked like they'd kill you as easily as shake your hand. A restaurant in the financial district where lawyers and accountants and people with blood on their hands discussed money movements with the casualness of ordering wine. And he introduced me as his. Not as a date. Not as a girlfriend. As someone who was his, who would speak for him, who mattered enough that crossing me meant crossing him. It was intoxicating. On the 3rd week of my education, I was sitting in a leather chair in a room with 12 of the most powerful men in the city. Marco was discussing a shipment that had gone missing. $3 million of merchandise. Everyone was angry. Everyone except me and Marco. "It's a test," I said suddenly. The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. "What?" Marco's voice was careful. "The shipment," I said, feeling my heart hammer in my chest but keeping my voice steady. "It's not actually missing. You let it go missing. You're testing who moves, who talks, who tries to take advantage of the gap in your operations." Marco was very still. I couldn't read his expression. "She's right," one of the men finally said. "That's exactly the kind of operation Marco runs." "Smart girl," another said. Marco stood and took my hand, pulling me to my feet. "We're done here," he said to the room. "Continue without me." He led me out to the balcony of the office, which overlooked the city glittering below. "You just earned yourself a lot of dangerous attention," he said quietly. "The moment you proved yourself useful, you became a target. Then I'll have to be more useful than they are," I said calmly. He turned to look at me, and there was something like pride in his eyes. "You understand what you're accepting?" "I'm accepting that I'm not going to be safe," I said. "But I'll be important. And I'll be yours. And you'll be mine. And that's a better deal than most women get." He kissed me then, and it felt like a promise. Not gentle. Not careful. A claiming. A declaration that whatever came next, I was locked in with him. "I'm going to love you until it destroys me," he said against my mouth. "You understand that?" "Yes," I said. "And I'm going to make you work for it every single day." He laughed, a real laugh, not the controlled smile I was used to. "God, you're going to drive me insane." "Good," I said. "That's the point." 3 months in, someone tried to kill me. It wasn't dramatic. There was no sudden explosion or car chase. I was leaving my office building, and a man bumped into me hard enough that I stumbled. I would have fallen if Marco hadn't been there, because Marco was always there now, though I rarely saw him until I did. I didn't realize what had happened until Marco was holding me against his chest and there was blood on my shoulder. The knife had grazed me. Just barely. A millimeter difference and I would have been seriously hurt. Marco's response was immediate and terrible. Later, I heard whispers that the man who'd tried to hurt me was found 3 days later in a way that made it clear he'd suffered. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. But that night, I saw the other side of Marco. The side that wasn't seductive or controlled. The side that was pure violence, barely leashed. He held me in his bed for hours, checking my bandage obsessively, running his hands over me like he was making sure all my pieces were still intact. This is my fault, he said. I made you visible. I made you matter, which means I made you a target. No, I said firmly. This is the world. You warned me about it. I thought I had time to prepare you, he said, and there was something broken in his voice. I thought I had years before something like this happened. But you don't, I said gently. Because this is real. This isn't romance, Marco. It's survival. And I accepted that. You were supposed to stay safe, he said. I was never going to stay safe, I replied. You knew that. You knew that the moment I walked into your world, everything changed. He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Harder. If you want out, I'll let you go, he said. I'll move heaven and earth to protect you, but I won't keep you here against your will. It was the hardest thing he'd ever offered me. Real choice. Real freedom. I don't want out, I said. I want in deeper. I want to know how to protect myself. I want to know how to be useful enough that people fear touching me because they fear you. I want to be your equal in this, not just your prize. He pulled back to look at me, and his eyes were searching. You'd actually do that? Yes, I said. Teach me. What followed was a year of change. I learned things I never expected to learn. Self-defense from Marco's most trusted security. Business strategy from his accountants. How to read people, their tells, their fears, their weaknesses. How to move through Marco's world not just as his woman, but as someone with power of her own. I became his right hand. Not officially. But functionally, I was in every meeting. I made suggestions. I caught details others missed. I became indispensable. And more importantly, I became someone people feared not because they feared Marco, but because they feared me. One night, 6 months into my education, a business rival tried to use me as leverage. He thought he could grab me at a charity event, use me to negotiate with Marco. He was wrong. I'd learned more than just business tactics. The security footage later showed me breaking his arm, calmly, methodically, before Marco's men even had to move. The look of shock on his face when he realized the woman he'd grabbed wasn't helpless was almost worth the bruised knuckles. Marco watched the footage with me afterward, and when he looked at me, his expression was different. More possessive. More impressed. More in love. I'm proud of you, he said simply. Good, I replied. Because I'm just getting started. It happened at a party thrown by one of Marco's business associates. Hundreds of people, politicians, crime bosses, judges, lawyers. Everyone who mattered in the city was there. Marco was across the room when a man approached me. Someone I'd seen before but never spoken to directly. He was smiling, trying to be charming, trying to gauge whether I was as capable as the rumors suggested. Your boyfriend seems distracted, the man said. Shame. A woman like you shouldn't be overlooked. I was about to respond when Marco appeared at my side. But he didn't grab me. He didn't assert ownership the way he used to. Instead, he took my hand and led me to the center of the room, where everyone could see. The music stopped. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe it just felt like it did. This is Giuliana, he said, his voice carrying across the entire space. She's not my girlfriend. She's not my woman. She's my partner. She runs operations for me. She negotiates for me. She speaks for me when I'm not in the room. And if you touch her, if you threaten her, if you even think about her in the wrong way, I'll end you in ways that will make you wish for simple death. He paused, letting that sink in. But more importantly, he continued, if you disrespect her, she'll probably end you herself, and I'll help her dispose of the body. Then he kissed me, in front of everyone, and the room absolutely erupted. People were clapping. Cheering. I realized then that Marco had just done something significant. He'd publicly elevated me from possession to partner. He'd made me matter not just because he loved me, but because I'd earned it. Later that night, in his penthouse, he made love to me with a tenderness that contrasted with the public display. Not rough. Not possessive in the physical sense. But with the kind of deep attention that made it clear every part of my body, every part of my mind, was his focus. "I've been thinking about what you said," he whispered against my skin. "About rich men and pleasing women." I was barely conscious, floating in that space between awake and dreaming where everything felt perfect. "You were right," he continued. "They can't do it because they've never had to understand what a woman actually needs. They think it's about the money or the status or the sex. But it's not." "What is it?" I asked. "It's about knowing you so completely that you'd choose to stay even if you could leave," he said. "It's about building something with someone instead of building something for them. It's about being seen and chosen anyway." "Is that what this is?" I asked. "What we are?" "Yes," he said with absolute certainty. "And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." A year and a half after the gallery, I was sitting in Marco's office, my office now, technically, since we shared the space, when his business advisor came in with shocking news. "The Castellano family wants to merge operations," he said. "They're proposing an alliance. Marriage to seal it." Marco's first instinct was to refuse. I could see it in how his jaw tightened. But I was thinking bigger. "Who's doing the marrying?" I asked. Both men looked at me. "Well, you, presumably," the advisor said carefully. "To their youngest son." "No," I said. "I have a better idea." I turned to Marco. "What if instead of me marrying their son, you marry me? Publicly. It's not just a relationship anymore. We make it official. We announce it to the entire city. The Castellano family understands that you're no longer a single operative who could be turned or controlled. You're tied to someone who has your ear, your loyalty, your complete trust. It's a better alliance than any marriage to their son would create." Marco was very still. The advisor looked shocked. "That's..." the advisor started. "Brilliant," Marco finished. He stood and pulled me up, spinning me in a circle. "You just turned a threat into our greatest advantage." "We did," I corrected. "And we're going to do a lot more of that." Within a month, Marco Belaluchcci married Giuliana Rossi in a ceremony that shocked the entire city. Not a small affair. A huge display of power, with every crime boss, judge, and politician in attendance. I wore white because I was genuinely happy, not because I was pretending to be innocent. Marco wore black because that was who he was. And when he slipped the ring on my finger, I felt it like a lock clicking into place. "I love you," he said, in front of everyone. "I know," I replied, and everyone laughed because they understood, I wasn't surprised by his love. I'd earned it. 6 months later, I was pregnant. It wasn't planned. Or maybe it was, in the way that Marco planned everything. He'd asked me quietly if I wanted it, and I'd said yes, and somehow that had become his directive to the universe. I was sitting on our penthouse balcony, overlooking the city that now answered to us both, when Marco came out with a box. "What's this?" I asked. "The next phase," he said simply, opening it to reveal a crown. Not a literal crown, but a diamond-encrusted tiara that looked like it belonged on someone who ruled empires. "Marco. When our child is born, you become the face of what I built," he said. "Not my wife. My queen. You'll sit beside me at every negotiation. Every operation. Every strategic move. Our child will grow up knowing that this city is ours because we decided it would be." I looked at the crown, then at the man who'd somehow transformed from a dangerous stranger into the person I couldn't imagine my life without. "Is this still about the bet?" I asked. "About proving you could please me?" He knelt beside my chair and took my face in his hands. "No," he said. "This is about something bigger. This is about building a legacy with someone who chose it with open eyes. This is about creating a family where power isn't something you take, it's something you inherit. This is about you, and me, and our child, and the future we're going to own. He kissed my forehead, then my lips, then my stomach where our baby was growing. I didn't plan to love you like this, he continued. But here we are. And every day, I'm grateful for the moment you walked into my life and challenged me to be more than just a crime boss. You made me want to build something that lasts. I ran my fingers through his hair, marveling at how much had changed. No regrets? I asked. Not one, he said. You? I looked out at the city. My city. Our city. Not one, I confirmed. That night, I lay in bed beside Marco, his hand on my stomach, feeling our child move beneath his palm. I thought about that first night in his penthouse, when he'd asked if I wanted to bet that he was different from every other rich man. He'd been right. He wasn't different because he had more money or more power. He was different because he chose to use that money and power to build something with me instead of something for himself. He was different because he listened. Because he learned. Because he was willing to be challenged and grow. In the darkness, I heard him whisper, "I love you." I know, I whispered back. And I love you too. And somewhere in the city below, in the offices and warehouses and buildings that bore our names, people were already calling me what I'd become. The queen of the city. And I'd earned every inch of that crown.